Hello, good morning. So recently I started a new job, and as my pappy always says, no one hires me because everything is great and they just want to show me their beautiful code and how perfect everything's working. So I get in there and we start having some conversations, and I put forward a proposal of how we can approach one of these big strategic kinds of things we want to go about. And a manager looks at what I've written and he says, "This sounds amazing. This sounds like we'd be writing code in a lush forest. But right now, we're in the desert. And I don't see how any of this works in a desert." And I think a lot of us, as software developers, have seen deserts. We've seen places where software is hard to write, things don't go smoothly, where deadlines are more important than the code that gets produced, all that kind of stuff. And we look, the only way out is with other developers in community. We were sitting and talking about like what things we've done in common, which things had we tried that worked in several different places, different contexts, different ways. And what we came up with was when developers talk to developers. But if you've never been anywhere but a desert, it's very hard to know what you should be building, or even when you should be reaching out and finding that community to build together.
Yeah, the forest just sounds impossible if you've only ever seen a desert. Just to take a nap in the shade. Shade, what are you talking about? And so our initial thought is, well, we do know how to write good software, and somehow we choose not to. We're engineers, genetically. So let's figure out how to fix it. What's going wrong that we don't do the things that we know work? And then we thought, no, that's not the way to approach this. You can't. This isn't a problem. Staying in the desert, choosing to stay in the desert, is not a problem to be fixed. It's first thing is just knowing what's possible in the forest, and then the second thing is figuring out how to get from wherever it is you are to something that's a more nourishing environment for you, for your colleagues, for the people that your software serves.
Something that lets you write software well.
Yes. So today's presentation is going to be a tour of the forest, kind of the cook's tour of the forest. Here are some things that you'll observe in the forest, and then we'll talk about what supports those things that you observe. And I want to make the point clearly that we're not trash talking the desert.
Right. It's not my personal favorite. It's not a lot of fun, but software is incredibly valuable, and it's so valuable that it's worth writing when we write it badly, and really when it's really expensive to write, when it doesn't work reliably, it's still often worth writing. And so that's part of why deserts have spread so far, is because we don't always, we don't have to write software well, but I prefer it. And there are times when your software needs to work, when there's actual consequences for failure, when trust is really important, or when you don't have the resources to just throw an extra 100,000 developers at a problem.
Right.
So those times are the times when the forest is not just fun, it's also important for the business, useful for the business, and the alternative can often end up just being projects that fail.
And Beth's working on pharmaceutical projects where failure means people die. So the first thing we wanted to talk about in the forest, you see essentially no bugs.
And this is why when you try to describe the forest to people who have never been there, they think you're absolutely off your rocker. Because when, how many places can say we've gone 6 months without seeing a bug in production? Right?
No, to make that a real question.
Yeah.
How many of your
people
teams have gone 6 months without a bug reported from production?
3, 5? Yeah. So it's possible. We have
Right, I see the smile.
Yeah.
But it really is possible. But it's not easy, but it is possible.
Right.
So what supports no bugs in production?
Well, testing is one thing. We can change things without them breaking. That's the big. Well, there's another solution, which is just you never change the software. But usually by the time we're getting paid something, we want something to improve. So we need to be able to make changes safely. So
in the forest, you will see programmers writing tests for their software. And that's an expression of the alignment of authority and responsibility. If you can break it, then you should be the one who's fixing it. You should deal with the consequences of your own decisions first and foremost. And so back in the 90s, there was we'd have QA departments take care of that. And programmers would write garbage and throw it over the wall, and you'd get the predictable results out of that. And one of the social innovations in extreme programming was having programmers take responsibility for the reliability of their own code.
But that also means understanding what that behavior is supposed to be. So you can't just having tests is not enough. I'm sure I've certainly seen test suites that made code harder to change instead of easier.
And didn't make it more reliable.
And didn't give me any confidence when I was making a change.
Oh, and are hard to read too.
Oh yeah. So in the forest though, the tests are just describe what the code does.
They're coupled to the behavior of the code. That is, if the code's behavior changes, the test result changes. That's what you want. But they're decoupled from the structure of the code so that you can change the structure without breaking tests. Another piece of that is incremental design.
Right. Yes. In the forest, you can look at a piece of code, read it, and understand what it's doing. And when you go to make a change, either the code is already suitable for that change, or you get to take the time to tidy it up first.
Which happens to be the title of my latest book, now available from O'Reilly Press. God, that was a great setup. We honestly didn't practice all of these. A few of them, yes, but not all of them.
We just spent 40 years.
Yeah, we did prepare for 40 years.
The way I phrase that is often, it's the make the change easy and then make the easy change.
Yes.
Instead of just trying. In the desert, we have to slog. The only way to get from one oasis to another is a very long, dusty, hot walk. But in the forest, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can just...
You can make the next change
Yes.
that you need to make. If it's hard, make it easy.
And then make it. Yeah.
In the forest.
And that... But it's not just about individual developers doing that design. It's about a community of all of the people involved who are reading the software.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that gets us to teaming.
I knew it. Oops.
Because we also have conversations about software in the forest. There's not the fear that we might disagree so profoundly that it would destroy the team to discuss our code.
Yeah. I'm going to code over here, and you go code over there.
Yeah.
And the less we interact, the less conflict we'll experience.
Yes.
And the more consequences we'll experience for the conflicts that we do have. So in the forest, we have those conversations. You'd like to do it your dumb way. I want to do it my smart way. And then we have to figure out where to go from there. That example was not the right approach to get through that. If you're taking
okay.
notes.
It's okay, though, to believe that in your head.
Yes.
And then you run the experiment.
Yes.
Because in the forest, we don't have to get decisions right the first time. If we have to get decisions right the first time to succeed, we might as well, either we need hundreds of teams trying this simultaneously and one of them is going to hit it big, or we should just give up, right? Like the chances that we are going to predict the future of a very complex system correctly, no matter how much time you spend thinking about it up front. Well, if you solve the halting problem, let me know.
That's right.
But mathematically, it's unlikely to happen. So instead, the way to make changes to complex systems to get the outcome you want is one small step at a time. Look at what the effect was, and then if it didn't do what you want, reverse it, get rid of it, back it out.
Yeah, in the desert, you don't have resources for experiments. You need to do it right the first time, or else. And it's always or else. The magical thing about the desert is somehow teams in the desert still make forward progress in spite of the lack of all the resources that they need. Somehow they make progress. I'm just less interested in how well can we do with not enough than I am in how can we make enough and then how well can we do.
Right.
That was almost a tweet. So in the forest, we're going to see a lot of experiments. That means people are going to be throwing away stuff where the alternative, keeping it, would be way worse than throwing it away.
And to make that effective, we can take many more much smaller steps. Thanks, G-Paw. Get that in there. That we don't have to set our sights on the North Star and just start walking. We can walk around the tree.
Instead of just bumping it repeatedly?
Yeah, I know.
Now you tell me.
And it means that the stakes of any one of those conversations we have are so much lower. Because at most, maybe it influences a day of work. Often it influences what we do for the next 15 minutes. We can all take 15 minutes and try something out. And if you can slice problems in these small ways and you have all of the support you need to be able to do those and get real results from experiments rather than just trying to read a design doc and mentally imagine code and hope it's the same as the code someone else was imagining when they wrote that document. Like, in the desert, we have lots of documents.
You have to have documents because people are dying all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So how does, are we finished leading up to zero bugs? What we know. I think the next thing is, because we could get to zero bugs just by not changing the code. Yes.
So what's the next test case? So we want more features.
Yes. So something else we see in the forest is that we get more done per unit of time, or have a smaller team accomplish the same amount. Right. Except if you fire half of everybody and then expect to get twice as much done. There's some book with that in the title, I think. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. I turn it into an emoji, or the little Bitmojis in Slack wherever I go. Little mythical man month.
Perfect.
In there.
So how do we get more done in the forest? What else? Right. What are the other prerequisites?
Well, we need to know what to do.
Yes.
Because I don't know. In the desert, we spend a lot of time planning. I have seen projects take twice as long to plan as they took to write. the code for. And that didn't make them any more successful. But if we talk directly to our customers instead of trying to guess what they're doing. So can we get a customer on the team?
Sure. So the customer is present in the forest. In the desert, you don't want the customer anywhere near where the sausage is being made.
We can't talk about our code to each other. We definitely can't talk about it to customers.
But in the forest, the customer can be there, and then you can ask questions, and then you can get answers.
The other day, I saw a TikTok of a librarian telling other librarians to tell their systems administrators to switch their library software to the new experimental UI because it was so amazing. And I felt good as a programmer. I felt proud of our industry that we had made someone this happy that they went and they made a TikTok. And if you have customers around, you can just feel that way every day.
In the forest?
In the forest.
Yeah.
If you're in the desert and the customer's upset and you're not allowed to fix their bugs and you're not allowed to fix their problems and you need to write documents with all, then it's pretty depressing to have the customer there.
Yeah, it's only when things are going wrong.
Right.
But in the forest, the customer's there, they're part of the team, the conversations swirl around. It's okay.
Yeah.
So that's part of how you get more done. Part of how you get more done is just having no bugs.
Right. Oh,
how wonderful would that be? There's just no bugs.
And your design makes the next change really easy.
And if it doesn't, you fix it.
You fix it. So.
In the forest. You don't have to live here just yet. But by the time we're done, we'll explain how to take steps to get there. If it was easy, regular people would do it, right? So.
Well, if it was easy, in the forest, though, we have time to figure it out and learn.
Right.
We have time to teach people. We have time to teach people to program well.
Okay, so in the forest, we're going to see skills.
Yeah. Developers will be doing jobs that they know how to do. I know that's really that you're confident in.
You won't be thrown in the deep end without support. If it's something you don't know how to do, somebody will teach you.
Yes, there you go. And if you genuinely don't know something, because sometimes we do things nobody has ever done before, you'll have a community of people. You'll get to team and figure it out together.
We were talking about how you see these books, Mastering Distributed System Design in 7 Days. Try 20 years. That would be a brief time span to gain skills of that complexity.
Well, and this is where what supports skills is down the tree learning and not expecting everyone to know everything up front. We get to use techniques even if someone straight out of school can't use them effectively, because we have work that junior engineers can do. We have teaming where junior engineers can learn, and we can no one has to do everything in the system. Some people will be writing exemplary code that other people can crib off of and still be productive as they learn during this process.
So another root skill here, or root observation, is we're only ever going to plan for half of what we think we can accomplish. That's what we see in the forest, is that no plan contains more than half of what the team thinks that they can accomplish. So let's see, which role do you want to play? Do you want to be the management or
I'll be management. Sure.
Oh, okay, okay. Here's the plan.
Yeah.
You need more.
What? Where's the rest of it?
This is everything we can accomplish in the time span.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I want all of that. And then can I have a 10% more?
No. This is it.
Well, but how can you do that faster so I can get my 10% more?
This is it. This is what we can do. Pressure. The question I always have is, here's a plan for half. If you say, hey, that's not enough, I want to say, well, what's your contingency plan if I commit to twice as much as this and I only get this accomplished? Is it a disaster? Is it just kind of annoying?
So we should probably start mitigating those consequences instead of trying to pretend we're going to accomplish more than we can. Right? If the project deadline, I can't sell that deadline is a phrase I heard. They said, how long is this project going to take? I said, end of March, probably. Yeah, we'll get it done somewhere around there. And they said, oh, I can't sell that.
I can't sell that deadline.
Here
are the facts.
It delivered on March 27th.
Yeah, but they couldn't.
Nobody mind. But if you aren't planning half, if you are trying to plan everything and have perfect control, it's about people being afraid of what else you might accomplish, that you're wasting resources somehow, when actually that's all you were ever going to get done. You could be green all the time. Every team could be green. So obviously in the desert, the point is not to have teams be green. It's not actually to deliver software predictably or we'd behave very differently. For one thing, companies would know how many projects we're delivering late. I have been at companies that care deeply about deadlines and have no idea how often they hit them.
And this is a story I cribbed from you, which is, if your project, you never want to go to a status meeting and say, my project is green.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to finish this one?
Oh.
It's a great story.
Oh, yeah. Because if your project is green, obviously you have more resources than you need. So we're just going to steal a couple of engineers and put your engineers on this red project over there.
So always yellow. You just always want to be on the precipice of disaster. That's the desert.
The desert says if you have too much, it's going to be stolen from you. The mice are going to come at night and carry off your saddlebags. In the forest, they don't need to.
Because there's enough.
And what we care about is getting the most important thing done, which we know because we've talked to a customer.
So another thing, as we were drawing this picture, the tree with there's the roots and then there's the fruit above. And one thing to notice is that people really want the fruit. They really want the fruit. And that roots stuff, if we could just cut that off and just have that fruit, that would be great and super.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work that way. That there's fruit available. Zero defects is a reality that you could manifest, but there's a lot of work that goes into it.
And so it becomes, in practice, a game of give and take, where someone says, I want this thing, and you say, great, to do that, we are going to need to team. And then they'll say, oh, we can't team. And then say, well, how valuable was this leaf going to be? How much did that bug just cost us? Right.
So something else you see in the forest is you see frequent demos. Why is this coming in the back? I don't know. Okay. And so my teams, I set this up on Fridays. Every Friday, we're going to show the user something that makes them glad that they invested in the software this week. And that means that some of the work at the root level is going to be split up differently than it would be if maybe we just had infinite time. So that it's going to take us 4 months to migrate from this library to that library. Fine, take 12 months to do it, because we still have to give demos every Friday of something new. You can't just go dark, because that relationship between engineering and everybody who's relying on engineering is more important than having engineering be perfectly efficient. In the desert, you have to pretend like engineering's perfectly efficient because there's just not enough time.
Right. And you don't have any relationships to maintain. You are carefully sheltered from relationships. You don't have to go to those meetings.
Yeah, you have tickets, though.
You do have, yes. But they should have all of the acceptance criteria in them so you don't have to talk to anybody. Whew. So glad we fixed that.
Yeah, the more we put into the tool, the less human we can be.
Yeah.
In the desert.
In the desert. And until we have to have a conversation, and then people. But that delivers features sooner, which is one of those leaf nodes everybody wants. How soon can you get me a version of this? In the forest, it's really fast. The magical moment is if you go talk to a customer and they say, it's so frustrating that when I hit this button, sometimes something goes wrong and it doesn't save and I lose my work and it's terrible. So I have to like copy paste from somewhere else. And you go, that's awful. Let me fix that for you. Boop. Try it now. And that builds that relationship of trust. People come to you with their problems. They come to you with the opportunities too. Users, customers know where the value lies for the business. They know what is going to be productive to build. Okay, and in the desert, we teach them not to tell us.
So users know where the value lies in the business. Users discover.
Yeah.
Because this isn't, the users tell me where the value is.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just going to put my feet up until you tell me where the value is. And then I'll get to work on it.
Right.
We're co-discovering value as we go along.
They'll know pain. They don't know how to fix it. Nobody knows how to fix it. Nobody's fixed it before or it would be fixed.
Yep.
So
what else down on the root system? So we were talking planning cycles.
Planning. Yeah. So we've got to planning half. And that works, by the way, whether you're planning 1 week, sign up for what you think you can do by Wednesday at noon. Or if you're planning a quarter, sign up for 6 weeks of work. All of those cycles, though, are about having some ritual that says this space is for programming. This space is to build this particular software. So it's called a magic circle in a theater world, where we set aside a space, and it doesn't matter how people behave outside of that space. When we step into this space, we are part of this team, and this team writes tests. Or when we step into this space, we are part of the team building features for the customer support team. And so that's who we build a relationship with. And then the amazing thing about Magic Circles is when you close them, you get to go home. You do not have to keep thinking about work.
So
in the forest, you go to work. You are incredibly productive. You have these fulfilling, productive relationships with your coworkers. And then you all get to go home.
And rest.
Yeah, because that's how we get to 40-hour weeks.
Well, less than 40.
Less than 40 hours, yeah.
Here, we're in Europe, so. So I've given talks with simultaneous translation, where the translator is saying the previous sentence while they're listening to the next sentence that you're saying. And it's so mentally taxing that they work in teams of 2 or 3, 15 minutes at a time. That's all that the human brain is capable of sustaining with that level of intensity. And I've always wanted to program so hard that my brain would just melt after 15 minutes, and I've never been able to get to it. But imagine if you were that focused and that concentrated in a team situation This is like the ultimate forest vision for me. In a team situation, the customer's right there. They're going to be really happy when you're finished. You've got the support of the rest of your team with you. And you're focused so hard, like by noon, you'd be finished. And your brain's fried. You would just need that long to recover before you did that again. I've never been on a team that was that focused and that intense with what they did. But I've been on teams where 6 hours of really solid work a day and then a couple of hours of overhead, and then you're done. You're ready to go. When you step out of that circle on Friday, it feels so good to be able to say, look, it's not that I'm not going to think about work, because let's be honest. We're going to think about it. I mean, it's going to be churning in the back of the mind, but we're free to not think about work. In the desert, you got to think about work 24/7, because if you don't, you might die.
Well, some unspeakable thing is going to happen.
Yes.
The desert hates talking about actual consequences.
Yeah, the deadline.
The deadline. What happens when we miss the deadline is my favorite question, because nobody has an answer. When they have an answer, those are important deadlines. Those are things we will work towards. We'll vary scope to be able to hit them, all of that stuff. But often, we have what role is the deadline playing here? You'll get 3 different answers from 3 different people. Yeah,
and I figure if nobody actually dies,
right.
I'm not going to take it all that seriously at this point. So we're going to step into the circle every week. We're going to step into the circle every day. We're going to step into the circle every time we begin a teaming session. And when it's over, it's over. Then begins the rest and reflection and preparation for the next time we step into the circle.
Because there's this idea, in order to take effective action, you have to have a relaxation phase. You have to take action, you have to get feedback, and then you have to relax before you can reflect on whether that worked and then try something different.
Yeah, imagine trying to sell relaxation in the desert.
Well, you planned for every minute of the day, so
that's right.
When are you going to have the chance to reflect?
Right.
Whereas here, we have time for retros.
Yes.
Right.
Well, my favorite retro is called a coffee machine. Just love setting up a really good coffee machine with really good coffee someplace a little ways away from where the team is sitting. And you just go and naturally gather around there and have a chat over the coffee. And then you go back to work.
Right. And you can talk about every single bug that comes up, because there was one this month, and it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the forest. But.
All right.
But all of that's really about the team level.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for programmers to only care about how we work.
Up to maybe 15 or 20 people.
Right. Right. And it works great if you've got 20 people. I don't know if that's probably one of the more common ways to have experienced the forest, is on a team somewhere between 10 and 30. You all knew what you were working on, right? It was maybe it was a startup with a really clear hypothesis. Nothing existed yet, but the founder was someone who needed a tool built for whatever their domain was, and they hired some developers, and he built a great relationship. That's one of the ways that I've seen people get to the forest. But in bigger, when you get multiple teams in the desert, you all get your own OKRs, and you have to fight to keep the other teams from breaking your metrics before you can make them better.
Yeah. Because there's not enough to go around.
There's not enough to go around. And you have to try to make, you've also, in the desert, we have strong ownership boundaries so that only I can touch my code, because I'm afraid of what will happen if someone else at my company touches my code.
Because they're only going to do the bare minimum to get their use case working. And if they break somebody else's, they don't care.
We don't have a relationship. I don't know what kind of coder they are.
Right.
They're just some rando off the street. Are they going to write tests? I don't know. Oh, maybe we can add a tool
There we
that
go.
requires test coverage before that will solve it.
Sure.
Or we could have a conversation
in a community.
in a community.
Yep.
Having planned half, we have plenty of time. And that way we don't have to scramble for the resources we need to have our work. Right? I've seen microservice architectures that were the equivalent of if you took a Java code base and every team is allowed to write one class. And I really want to try this experiment sometime. I want to get 10 people in a room, and you're only allowed to change your class, and you're not allowed to look at anyone else's. So you're just yelling out, "Hey, can you add a getter?"
So something that happens in the forest is there's no blockers.
Right. Yeah.
If my team needs something from your team, if you're really super busy in the forest, you help me do the work. If you're not super busy, you do the work, but you let me help so that you understand in the forest because there's enough time. I've seen these 1,000-person organizations that spent tremendous amounts of time figuring out, okay, these 100 people do this, these 100 people do this, these 100. Okay, so now we have the basic divisions. Now here's the queue of work for this team. Here's the queue of work for this team. Here's the queue now, but they depend on them and they're depending on them. So
and then we're worried about security. And so every one of those teams now has to go through a 3-month security review before they're allowed to release anything.
But we can't really afford that many security people.
Yeah.
So we'll just make that queue longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the security people will be very busy.
Yes.
But in the forest, there's just no blockers.
And you get there by having, do we already add alignment? This is the responsibility of a good executive team, is that the company knows why it exists. And this isn't just programmers saying this. This is Peter Drucker, management consultant extraordinaire, whatever, spent 70 years writing management books. The business needs to know what its business is. And it's not necessarily the obvious thing. His example was the phone company. Their business was customer service in America because in most of the world, phone companies were nationalized. And this company wanted to not be nationalized. And the important thing was that voters all experience a wonderful, delightful experience of making phone calls. And so that was their business's business, was avoiding nationalization. But if you don't tell people what the goal of the business is, they will make something up. They're going to guess. And they're going to guess different things, and they're irreconcilable. If leadership isn't willing to take responsibility for telling a cohesive story of why we're here, why we're stepping into the circle together, then the only thing left is to fight it out. And in the desert, we have all-out brawls over territory and who gets what resources. And in the forest, we only have opportunities. We have what would we get if we spent another $1 million? And what would we have to give up if we needed to spend $1 million less? And you can have those conversations because we know why we're there.
I said shared goal. Is that
shared goal? Yeah.
Do we share a goal? And the times that I've been on teams that really shared a goal, it just transforms everything that everybody does. Last team that I managed, our goal was replacing a legacy system. And so I invented the phrase Independence Day. The day we got to shut off the legacy system was Independence Day. And 5 times a day I'd say, well, does that get us towards Independence Day? Is that getting us further away from Independence Day? And pretty soon the team started saying it, and then I could shut up, which was a relief to everybody. And but having that kind of a clear goal meant that people could kind of guess and be right about priorities.
Yeah.
Which is magic.
Right. We have alignment because we have the same information. Instead of trying to force, in the desert, You are required to use whatever programming language the original architect who didn't write any of the code decided we were going to use for this architecture. In the forest, we end up using a small set of languages because we know that we're going to be working in each other's code. And the languages we use are suited to their tasks. Instead of trying to plan up front which lambdas we're going to put in Python and which ones are going to be in JavaScript.
Yeah. So we've painted a picture now of the fruits of the forest, which a lot of people would like to have, but they are unsure about paying the price of. We've talked some about the roots of those fruits. And so what do you do if you're in the desert, though, and you have dreams? You wake up in the cold of the desert night, and you had this wonderful dream of living in the forest, and you look around and all there is sand.
Right.
What do you do next?
Because you can't just plant a tree.
Trees planted in the desert just die.
Right. If you just start off by trying to plan half, the immune response of this organization is going to kick up. Maybe, if they notice. It's possible, but maybe. So also, you don't know for sure what we have, the feedback we have on whether we're in the desert or the forest is our own feelings. In the forest, we get to feel joy. We get to feel this geeky joy at graceful code that does its job well. You go to make a change and you're like, oh, that was nice. And when we don't feel that, the signals we get are anxiety, imposter syndrome. We're afraid someone's going to look at our code. Instead of being excited to show somebody our code, we're worried about having to go into other people's code instead of being kind of curious about what we're going to find. So, and we get to those. So the first thing to do is to find another developer and talk to them and see how they're feeling. Are they feeling joy? Because sometimes maybe this is all context dependent. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just haven't learned this language yet and I'm feeling kind of insecure. And actually nothing would stop me from doing all of this. Maybe even other teams around me are doing all of this and I haven't felt confident enough to go do it. So first thing to do is go find one other developer and have a conversation.
So that's the beginning of community. So when I was at Facebook, I instigated a community called the E-Sensei, which was the 100 highest leveled engineers at Facebook. And every 3 months we would get together and have a conversation. And sometimes we picked the topics. Sometimes a senior manager would come in and talk. And no managers were allowed in the room, period. And as soon as somebody transitioned from being a senior engineer to a manager, they were unceremoniously booted out of the group and not
automated, right?
Yes, all automated. We're programmers, after all. You had an example of
because that makes it sound like this is for elite, the best of the best, whatever. My experience. I got all of the non-men at my company together and we started a book group. And we would just read mostly businessy kinds of books, stuff about metrics and observability and all that kind of stuff. And we'd spend half an hour talking about the book and we'd spend half an hour talking about our work. And it was people at every experience level. We had senior sort of staff level, what we'd call now staff level engineers, down to brand new people straight out of college. Sometimes interns would come in for the summer. And it was about 8 people. And we noticed after about 6 months that this had had a profound impact on how we were working. We were more successful than people around us because we knew people in other parts of the company and we had real relationships. We found problems that multiple teams had and no one team thought was worth fixing, but were actually costing the company a ton of money because developer time is worth money. And we built that community on just like I think you can do it with just random. The various ERGs, affinity groups, it says worked for me at other places with the LGBT group. You just get a group of people together on the basis of literally anything. So I've now done it on who's interested in reading a particular book, who wants to go take photographs in a park. Anything that gets a group of developers together talking about their work gives you the opportunity to build a forest.
So I gave a talk in Johannesburg at Agile Africa a few years ago, and I had a guy come up to me, and he said, "I just wanted to thank you for extreme programming. I was on an extreme programming team from 2003 to 2005, and those were the best 3 years of my career." And I'm tearing up now too. I just burst into tears right in front of this poor guy. And I that's what gets me.
That's all you ever wanted. That's all you want.
The forest should be the normal place to be. The desert should be, those are, why?
You should have to pay us way more.
Yeah, to
live in the desert.
In the desert. I mean, I do have a desert price, but it's... But instead, we're in this community that chooses to stay in the desert, even though the forest is there.
And I think part of it is just that we have grown so fast, people don't even know these things are optional. They don't know that there are other ways of building software. They don't know that we can be good at building software. And it shouldn't be an accident that we get to live here. We can engineer these processes. We can engineer the management strategies that support them. We can engineer environments that are accountable to users, useful, producing value regularly with feedback, honestly, confidently, joyously, enjoying this amazing work. We get to build worlds out of nothing. And that should be something that we get to celebrate, not something that we dread going into work on Monday.
Yeah, or you dream about the time 20 years ago that you really enjoyed it. So today you have the opportunity to get together with one other geek and plant one little tuft of grass in your desert and grow from there. Thank you all so much for your time and attention.